Hello, good day viewers. Welcome to Medical Files brought to you by Studio 77, where your health is our priority. I am Adeleke Favour Wajesu, beauty always on duty. We turn our spotlight to a disease that is making a troubling comeback, diphtheria. Diphtheria was once thought to be under control, but it has recently re-emerged in Nigeria, claiming the lives of 2 children in Kaduna State. This serves as a stark reminder that infectious disease never truly go away, except we stay vigilant. Now, let's dive into what we have today. What exactly is diphtheria? Diphtheria is a highly contagious bacterial infection found in the bacterium diphtheriae. It mainly affects the nose and throat, and in some severe cases, the skin. The disease is known for producing a thick grey membrane in the throat and can block airways and make breathing difficult. What makes diphtheria dangerous is not just the infection itself, but the toxins that the bacteria produces. These toxins can damage the heart, the nerves, the kidneys, and can even be fatal if untreated. Now let's go back and check what diphtheria has done in history. Diphtheria was once a major cause of illness and death among children globally. Before the vaccine was introduced in the 1920s, it caused large outbreaks, especially in Europe and the United States. Thankfully, routine childhood immunization has drastically reduced its occurrence in many parts of the world. However, in developing countries like Nigeria, where vaccination coverage is low or disrupted, diphtheria is still posing a major health risk, and it's raising concerns about gaps in immunization and public awareness. Now let's look at the current situation of diphtheria in Nigeria. Just days ago, Kaduna State reported a resurgence of diphtheria, resulting in the death of 2 children. Health authorities confirmed that several suspected cases are being investigated and emergency response measures have been activated. This outbreak is a wake-up call, not just for Kaduna but for the entire country. It highlights the need for improved vaccination coverage, rapid diagnosis, and public awareness. Now, let's look at the current situation of diphtheria in Nigeria. Just days ago, Kaduna State reported the resurgence of diphtheria, resulting in the deaths of 2 children, and health authorities confirmed that several suspected cases are being investigated at the moment, and emergency response measure has been activated. So since we all know that this is what is occurring, and it's already in one state of the country, it's important that we take protective and preventive measures so that it will not spread to other parts. It is not just a call of prevention to Kaduna State alone, but even to the country at large. Now let's look at the cause and symptoms. How do you get infected with diphtheria? Diphtheria spreads through airborne droplets. For instance, when an infected person coughs or sneezes, it can also spread through direct contact with an infected person's wound or contaminated personal items like tissues or drinking cups. This disease is highly contagious, especially in crowded and unsanitary conditions. Without prompt treatment, it can spread quickly within households, schools, and communities. This tells us that proper hygiene can help to curb the spread of diphtheria, in the sense that unsanitary conditions can further help its spread and therefore lead to outbreak of diphtheria. So let's look at the signs and symptoms. Actually, according to what I said earlier, diphtheria can occur in the respiratory tract and also on the skin. So for the respiratory symptoms, they include sore throat, they include fever, swollen glands in the neck, they also include difficulty in breathing or swallowing, and also a thick grey coating in the throat or nose. So this tells us that when we begin to notice these symptoms such as sore throat, you can't breathe well, you can't swallow, it's important that we take steps by going to the hospital. And when it comes to the cutaneous symptoms, which has to do with the skin, symptoms include ulcers on the skin or sores on the skin. And if it is left untreated, diphtheria toxins can lead to heart rhythm problems, paralysis, kidney failure, and even death, especially in children under the age of 5 and adults above the age of 60. When we talk about children under the age of 5, it means these children have low immunity because they are young. Their body has not been able to build enough immunity to combat the infection. And when we talk about the adults which are above the age of 60, their immunity has the immunity level of those people are beginning to wane over time because they are getting old, and some things do not really have strong effect like they would in a young adult. So we should take note of this also. Now let's look at the diagnosis and treatment. A simple swab of the throat or a sample from a skin lesion can be tested to diagnose diphtheria. So like I said earlier, the symptoms include the swelling of the throat. They take a swab stick and swab the throat, and they check for the presence of the bacteria called the bacterium diphtheria. And if it's on the skin, they take a swab from the sore on the skin, and they also test for the presence of the bacteria. Now, if diphtheria is suspected, treatment must begin immediately, even before test results return. So it's not something that should take a long time to start treating. Even as the time of going to the lab to be tested, such person should have begun treatment, and the treatment involves antitoxin injection to neutralize the bacteria toxin. We already said earlier that the bacteria produces a toxin that can affect so many organs in the body. So the first thing to do is to inject with an antitoxin to combat the toxin produced by the Corynebacterium diphtheriae. And another thing is antibiotics like penicillin or erythromycin to kill the bacteria and stop the infection from spreading. Antibiotics helps to kill bacteria, so it can also be effective in treating somebody who is infected with diphtheria. Also, isolation. Patients are often isolated to prevent the disease from spreading to others. So isolation is another way to treat diphtheria, in the sense that when the person is kept away from the crowd, because we established earlier that the causes and symptoms include overcrowding. So when the person is separated from the crowded region, it helps to curb and reduce the spread of the disease. So in severe cases, the patients may require hospital care, especially if their breathing is affected. The good news is that diphtheria is preventable and treatable. Now let's look at the prevention. The good news is that diphtheria is preventable, and the most effective way to prevent diphtheria is through vaccine, and it comes through the combination of tetanus and whooping cough vaccine. The DTP vaccine, which is for diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis infection. So children in Nigeria are expected to receive these doses at 6 weeks of age, with follow-ups during infancy. Booster doses are also recommended in adolescence and adulthood, unfortunately. So now, we can see the importance of vaccine. If someone has been vaccinated at an earlier stage in life, there is very high probability and high possibility that the person would not even have to be infected with diphtheria at any point in their life. So this goes out to parents and guardians, all that we are meant to vaccinate our children at the early stages of their life at the appropriate time to prevent them from being infected at their later years. So now, to the did you know section of the medical files. Did you know that in the early 1900s, diphtheria was so feared in America that public places were shut down during outbreaks, and children had to carry proof of vaccination just to attend school? In fact, the diphtheria antitoxin was one of the first medical treatments produced using horse serum, a scientific breakthrough that helped lay the foundation of modern immunology. Now, from the video, we can see that we can relate diphtheria to the recent outbreak we had some years ago, which is the pandemic COVID-19 that restricted movements, and people were locked in. No, there was no movement. And when the lockdown was eventually removed, traveling to other countries involved you bringing out an evidence that you've been jabbed, that is, you've received the COVID-19 vaccination. So you can also relate that to diphtheria in the sense that something that happened about over 100 years ago. Imagine something like that happened over 100 years ago, and they were locked in, there was no moving in. And at the end of the day, finally the diphtheria antitoxin was first produced from horse serum. It went through so many laboratory procedures, and then finally they were able to effectively produce an antitoxin against the diphtheria toxin. But now, thankfully, this laid the foundation for the field of immunology. But now we no longer need horse serum. There is now vaccine for diphtheria, no longer horse serum. So get your children vaccinated. So now, as we wrap up today's medical files, remember, diphtheria is deadly, but it is preventable. Vaccinate your children, watch for symptoms, and act fast if you suspect infection. Let's protect our families, our communities, and ourselves. You've been listening to Medical Files brought to you by Studio 77, and I remain beauty, always on duty. Join me again next week, same time, same platforms. Till then, stay informed, stay protected, and stay healthy. Bye.